People don't avoid reality because it's hard to understand. They avoid it because it's easy to understand. Simple reality doesn't give you anywhere to hide. When something is truly simple, it stops being negotiable. There's no clever reframing, no reinterpretation, no higher resolution insight waiting around the corner. The situation presents itself plainly, and the only thing left is what you're going to do with it. That's where resistance begins. Complex explanations feel safer because they preserve optionality. They keep multiple futures alive. They let you delay loss. As long as something is complicated, it's still open. As long as it's open, you don't have to decide. Simple reality closes the door quietly. It doesn't announce itself with certainty or drama. It shows up as a small, calm recognition. This isn't going to change. This doesn't fit anymore. This costs more than it gives. This version of me can't survive here. Those recognitions are clean. And because they're clean, they're expensive. Once you see them, you inherit responsibility. You're no longer confused. You're no longer waiting on information. You're waiting on yourself. That's a heavy transition. So the mind intervenes. It introduces complexity not to understand better, but to buffer impact. It stretches the moment of recognition into a longer narrative arc where you can still feel engaged without being committed. This is why people rehash the same situations endlessly. They're not trying to solve them, trying to avoid the finality that clarity would bring. Simple reality often dismantles identities. If the truth is straightforward, then years of effort, endurance, or explanation may suddenly look unnecessary or misdirected. That threatens the coherence of the story you've been living inside. It's easier to believe the situation is complex than to accept that the cost has already been paid and the return isn't coming. There's also a social cost to simplicity. Simple truths don't perform well. They don't signal intelligence. They don't showcase depth. They don't invite applause or debate. Saying this isn't working doesn't make you interesting. Saying I'm done doesn't make you impressive. Saying this is enough doesn't earn validation. Complexity, on the other hand, can look like wisdom. It can be mistaken for maturity. It gives people something to say when they're not ready to act. So people learn to talk around reality instead of touching it. They analyze patterns without exiting them. They name dynamics without leaving them. They collect insight without cashing it in. This is especially common in environments that reward articulation over action. Workplaces, institutions, online spaces, and even therapy cultures. In those spaces, being able to describe your situation fluently can replace actually changing it. Awareness becomes a performance instead of a pivot. Simple reality interrupts that economy. It doesn't care how articulate you are. It doesn't wait for consensus. It doesn't offer moral cover. It just stands there. Another reason simplicity is avoided is that it often feels emotionally underwhelming. There's no rush, no catharsis, no heroic arc, just a quiet recalibration. And quiet recalibration feels like nothing is happening, even when everything is shifting. People mistake that lack of emotional intensity for emptiness. They assume if it were real, it would feel dramatic. But real clarity often arrives without fireworks. It feels like gravity, not revelation. The mind, conditioned to equate intensity with truth, gets suspicious. It says, this can't be it. It's too flat, too small, too ordinary. So it reopens the question. It asks for more nuance. It demands more context. It invites doubt back in. Sometimes nuance is real. Sometimes complexity matters. But often, it's just grief in disguise. Grief for a future that won't happen. Grief for a role that's ending. Grief for a version of yourself that made sense inside the old story. Simple reality is where grief begins, because it's where fantasy ends. That's why people circle clarity instead of landing in it. They sense what it would cost emotionally before they consciously understand it. They delay the landing because they're still letting go. And that delay isn't failure, it's human pacing. But here's the trade-off. The longer you avoid simple reality, the more energy you spend maintaining complexity. The more you talk, analyze, and revisit, the more pressure accumulates. Eventually, complexity becomes heavier than truth. That's usually when clarity finally lands. Not as insight, but as exhaustion. Not because someone became braver, but because continuing became harder than stopping. Simple reality doesn't demand courage. It demands honesty at the right moment. And the right moment is usually when you realize you've already known for a while. People don't avoid simple reality because they're weak or delusional. They avoid it because simple truths end stories, and humans are built to survive inside narratives. But once a story stops serving life, simplicity isn't cruelty, it's mercy. And when you finally let it in, it doesn't solve everything. It just stops asking you to pretend.